Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. You know, it's my 42nd spring being around Ohio State football, and it's been fun to watch players develop, to watch coaches develop, to watch obviously national championship seasons, etc. But it's always been intriguing to me to watch coaches develop, and either you see an older coach come in and do his thing for a while, or you see young guys grow in the profession. And this quick little podcast, quick little show is about watching two uh, coaches in particular who caught my eye as players way back when because they were excellent players, great players, really. Uh, James Laurinaitis, linebacker, Brian Hartline, wide receiver. They were at Ohio State at about the same time in the mid 2000s. They're both 38 years old, and as you know, James Laurinaitis is starting his second season as the full-time linebacker coach for the Buckeyes. Brian Hartline is starting is into his spring as the bona fide offensive coordinator. He was named to that role a couple of years ago. You could argue maybe he wasn't quite ready for it. You could also argue that maybe Ryan Day wasn't quite ready to give up as much of the reins of the offense as he thought he was at that point. Then you saw uh, Chip Kelly come in last year. Brian Hartline was named the co-offensive coordinator at that point under Chip Kelly. And of course, Ohio State rolled to the national championship. Well, rolled, there were a couple of bumps there, but rolled to the national championship and with about as efficient an offense as you could have there, especially in that four-game run to the championship. Chip Kelly has moved on to the Las Vegas Raiders of the National Football League, and Brian Hartline has been elevated once again to the offensive coordinator. And as he will tell you, he's probably much better equipped to be it now than he was a couple of years ago. And when it first happened in what was that 2023. So and then you got James Laurinaitis, who was a consensus All-American 3 years in a row at Ohio State. Went on to what 8 seasons in the National Football League. Um, and got into coaching, was into radio with my buddy Bo Bishop for a while, then got into coaching as a GA, graduate assistant, for his good buddy Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame in 2022, moved back to Columbus in 2023 as a graduate assistant coaching linebackers at Ohio State, and then last year was elevated to the full-time role of being a fully fledged college football assistant coach with the linebackers at Ohio State. And he is basically not overachieved. He's basically excelled in that. But as he will be the first to tell you, he's learned along the way. And the same thing with Brian Hartline. He was an instant hit as a GA with Ohio State way back in 2017. Then when Ohio State had his problems there in August in 2018 and had to sever ties with Zach Smith, Urban Meyer made Brian Hartline the wide receivers coach. Now, Brian Hartline had been in the NFL for 7 seasons and, knew his way around football, like I said, and wanted to get into it in a big time way. And of course, like I said, he was an instant hit as a wide receivers coach with the Buckeyes. And I've already talked about him being elevated to offensive coordinator in 2023, co-offensive coordinator in 2024, and now he's running the show. So I asked Ryan Day, particularly, I asked him about James Laurinaitis, what he's seen change in him over the last couple of years, becoming the fully fledged Ohio State linebackers coach. But then Ryan Day got into what it means to also see Brian Hartline do it. And he pointed out, some former players just aren't built for this, especially stalwart players, because Wayne Gretzky was not a hit as a hockey coach, but he was a hell of a player. But some can't really identify maybe with the different levels of players you coach, especially in college football. You go from grizzled veterans to neophytes to rookies, for whatever you want to call them, freshmen. In the same room, you're trying to teach the same course to people at 3, 4, 5 different levels of development, and it takes patience. It takes all kinds of things, and both of these guys, Brian Hartline and James Laurinaitis, have excelled in that. So first, let's hear what Ryan Day had to say about the development a coach goes through, much less a player, when he gets into the profession.
Making the transition from a player to a coach is not easy at all. Um, and there's only a handful of really, very good players that have gone on to become very good coaches.
Yeah.
Some certainly have, but when you're somebody like James who's played for a long time, you get a certain amount of credibility when you walk into a room. But playing and coaching is very different. Just the overall commitment to the hours you have to work, is one thing. How you communicate, you're completely out of control when the ball snaps. And understanding that it isn't what you know, it's what your players know. And it isn't giving them too much information, it's giving them the right information, allowing them to play fast. And then it's being organized with your thoughts, being organized for meetings, making sure you're prepared. And then it's the communication. When you're a player, you don't always have to be the best communicator. You just got to play when the ball snapped. So those are all things that you learn and you grow from, and a lot of this experience. And when you get someone like James or Brian who are very smart, they learn quickly. And those are two examples of guys who have done that. They've invested the time in to do it, and they've learned, each year how to grow as a coach. And one good thing about having former players is, for the most part, they're willing to take criticism too. Where coaches don't always do that. Sometimes, I would say, coaches are sometimes the most uncoachable players. I've heard that before. Or coachable people. It's true. But guys like James, guys like Brian are used to getting feedback consistently. So you can tell them what you see, and they grow from it and take the feedback. And I think both of them are excellent at that.
Yep. I mean, Ryan Day did it himself as a player. He was a star player at New Hampshire, and then got into the profession immediately at New Hampshire, ironically, coaching under Chip Kelly, who had been his offensive coordinator in college. And Ryan Day immediately excelled and moved on up through the ranks. He didn't get that e-ticket to a full-time assistant's job at a big-time school like James Laurinaitis did. But James Laurinaitis has a lot more things going for him than a lot of other coaches do who get into the profession. Brian Hartline, is kind of in the middle there. He worked his way into where he's standing today. But let's get first this little short snippet from James Laurinaitis as we talked to him during the spring this year about how he has developed as a coach.
Probably just a lot more organized. You get better as a teacher. I think you have to start with like a foundation and realize, I think when I first got into coaching, I didn't realize how little, like when I was at Notre Dame, I didn't realize how little college kids actually knew about just what I would consider just obvious football. And so that comes from last time I was playing football was, you're in your 8th year, you're 30 years old, you've forgotten more football than the kids that you go and coach know. So it's like, you have to almost shrink back. Okay, when I was 18 years old, what did I know about football? Nothing. Nothing. I always tell people the story, in high school, the linemen are about the same size as you. You just kind of go run and try to run through them. There's no technique. And then you get here and you're on scout team, and Nick Mangold is the starting center, and you're getting just absolutely destroyed every play because you're trying to run through Nick Mangold, and he's just baptizing you play after play after play. So that's just part of it. So I think you got a long way to go. You're always learning in this game. If you're not, you're going to get humbled fast. So I think I'm more organized. James, do you?
Yes. I mean, and the thing about James is he's a curious dude, man. You watch him work. I mean, he's still at that level, 38 years old. He can still get out there and run around with guys and show them how to do things, which is, sometimes that's the best way. Some people learn the best by watching instead of hearing or reading. And so James Laurinaitis can mix those two still. You remember when coaches back in the old days used to get down into the line and get after it with people until, finally common sense prevailed and they got out of that. But, Brian Hartline, same way. Brian Hartline was a stellar wide receiver in the National Football League, and for so many years with the Miami Dolphins until his last season with the Cleveland Browns. But he had definite cachet when he walked into Ohio State first as a graduate assistant and getting that promotion, maybe a little early, but he excelled at it as soon as he got it. I mean, the players were already raving about what he brought to the situation in 2017, and he became a full-time assistant coach in 2018. And it's He's turned Ohio State into wide receiver U, no doubt about it. So, but we talked to him, and I posted this on Twitter way back at the beginning of spring, but I wanted to revisit it on, the difference in him now as opposed to 2 years ago, at least from his words, of maybe he's a little more ready to be that offensive coordinator as long as he keeps learning on the job, as he points out. The whole key is to keep learning no matter what level you are. But here's what Brian Hartline had to say about that.
I would say that, yeah, it's been 2 years, and I guess, selfishly, individually, maybe grown a little bit, but I don't know, it is different. I couldn't always tell you why. I think that the staff around me is awesome, not that it wasn't then, but really comfortable in my skin, and I think, being around Coach Day, Coach Bailey, Chip Kelly, pick them, Justin Fry, it was, if you're not around and you're not learning, you're not growing, then you're kind of wasting your time. So try not to waste a day of that. I'm not saying we're perfect like everybody else in this room, but we're surrounded by a lot of elite individuals. So trying to maximize each day, and when the opportunity presents itself, be a better version of yourself. And there's some opinions on why I think it might be a little different now, but keep those to myself. I think I've grown individually, frankly, and I'm just excited for the opportunity.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.